day and welcome to episode 4 of Capital Alchemy. I'm Tatenda and I'm thrilled to have alongside me our esteemed co-host, Lerato. Today we are fortunate to have Nick Presky, Senior Financial Manager at Finance Isle of Man, and Stephen Wilson, Group Chief Operating Officer, along with Rolf Odendal, Business Development Executive, both representing Boston Multifamily Office. We'll be delving into the east sides on the Isle of Man, a leading international business center celebrated for its innovation, professionalism, and steadfast commitment to positive engagement with international initiatives and standards. Welcome, Nick, Stephen, and Rudolph.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, awesome. Let's start off by exploring the concept behind the Isle of Man Indaba. What does it entail? What is it about? And yeah.
So we started the Indaba, interestingly enough, in October 2019, and they got just before the big COVID thing. And the idea was that we wanted to bring something from the Isle of Man to South Africa, to show how South Africa and the Isle of Man can work together. So it's very much a working together, the one helping the other one going on. But I'm positive about South Africa. I'm passionate about South Africa. So even though I've been living for 19 years in the Isle of Man, I'm still Afrikaans. I still speak Afrikaans at home, and I'm passionate about South Africans and South Africa.
Yeah.
And it for me, it was a case of we've got so many good things in the Isle of Man. How do we bring it out to that? And after COVID, we revived that, and I brought along a couple of my buddies.
Okay.
And people who I did with, and I said, we need to go and do this.
Yeah.
And it was a network of people that consisted of South Africans and South Africans that is passionate about South Africa. It was involving government because of the close relationship between industry and government in the Isle of Man.
Okay.
And it was this, guys, what can we go and bring down to South Africa? That for me was very important. So the idea behind this, the Indaba, is not, we want to take everything out of South Africa. It's very much, it's good to think of other possibilities internationally, but there's actually a lot of good that can come down to South Africa as well.
Yeah.
And it's those two things together that makes the Indaba very special for me.
Yeah, I think what was interesting for me as a government representative to come on this is the first thing I noticed, it was about education. It's sort of explaining to people how things might work, how it might look. When you set off on that journey, you can't go straight into, the solutions that you've got. You've got to take people on a bit of a journey. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough I came on the one before you actually formed the Indaba.
October 2019, that's right, yes.
Yeah, and, I was quite impressed by it wasn't selling, it was educational. And that was the thing that I quite liked about it, because I felt we were then taking people on that journey. And, I think that was very important for me.
So I've been part of the Indaba for the second time now. And it's odd because even today's Indaba, I was still saying, I wish you were here at the last Indaba, because with the last Indaba, we covered succession planning, we covered certain topics that would have been beneficial to you when I was talking to other people outside. And then I bumped into a few other people that have been to previous ones, and they were intrigued by the fact that at every Indaba they're learning something new and they're taking something back. So how do we actually pick topics? How do we keep the conversation evolving? Because what Nick said is very beneficial, that we are always educating people as much as we still want to work together with them.
And I think from a topics perspective, it's keeping it fresh. We come in every 6 months, and you say some would think, well, that is that too much? But I think we want to show that we're here for the long term. We are. We also, for us, we also need to be here. We've got clients here, we've got relationships. We want to build the relationship, and I think from a topics perspective, things are changing all the time. There's new, at the moment, our topic at the moment of bringing capital into the country, I think is hugely relevant at the moment with credit ratings and with trying to show what the Isle of Man has done in the past and what we continue to see. So I think from a topic perspective, we try and cover something that's interesting and something to bring value. But and Lerato, I'm glad you actually mentioned that on the fact that we the past ones, people are missing out on that. But that's we try and say as well. Well, let's have a teams catch up on that.
Right. I thought there's something interesting as well from our perspective as a territory. I think it shows you the complexity and the types of businesses that we can actually deal with. These topics aren't being invented. These topics are things that are happening every day, but we just deem them as topical at a particular time. So it's happening, but sometimes, I think it's a good way of showcasing, what we do. Coming back to the educational piece again, we've talked about succession planning. That was great, but we want to, take people on a slightly different journey and widen their horizons too.
Interesting. And with the topic that is currently on the table for this year, how was this topic chosen, if I may ask? I mean, was it because you had quite a lot of interest with regards to it, with the questions asked, or it's something that you guys thought, okay, fine, I think this might be pertinent to South Africa. Let's go down to South Africa. Let's tell people about this. And hopefully you spoke about the educational piece. Hopefully we educate them, Yeah.
I think we had a directors meeting where we chat about this, and there's so many things to do and areas that you want to cover at Tendeka. But when we had the discussion, South Africans are entrepreneurial. It's in our nature.
Yeah.
And you speak with someone who's got so much potential in doing something great, but what he thinks about is just South Africa. I'm just going to, I'm now in Joburg and Pretoria now, Joburg, Pretoria and Kimberley. And then suddenly you speak with him and you say to him, well, you can go to Zimbabwe and Botswana and you can expand, you can grow.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know what your view would be, Stephen, but my view was taking a topic and cracking that tough note, the nut, and saying to people, what you can actually expand quite a lot, and here's one mechanism that you can have. So we don't necessarily want to bring the answer, but just give ideas.
You don't need to be a multinational company to get to bring fund to attract funding to grow. We've got plenty of examples, and we started seeing more examples. So that's where the conversation had. So well, this is something we need to talk about this. And an example of fintech business in South Africa, who's a well-known fintech business who wanted to grow in South Africa, but also grow into the rest of Southern Africa. Well, they didn't have the funding, but they needed up to you're talking $50 million, and this wasn't they couldn't do this on their own. They couldn't do this within South Africa. They couldn't use the debt instruments or the listing in South Africa. They had to go further afield. So they they got advice within South Africa, UK, Isle of Man, and we managed to set up a really, really good structure where the funding partners are comfortable with South Africa, with Isle of Man being with a stable jurisdiction with the good credit rating, and able to funnel that money down into South Africa. And actually, this is this one examples a couple of years ago, and the business has grown within South Africa and is now into neighbouring countries. So it can be done, and I think from a topics perspective, we're trying to be what's going on at the moment. Last time the substance one. The substance conversation was definitely because substance was top of everyone's list.
And then the intellectual property one.
Yes. So that's what I was about to go into. How did you guys get into the intellectual property, the code development? Because even till today, I still feel like that's one message that needs to be carried through over and over and over, especially we're talking about financing, how to attract investors, and also how to grow your business.
Well, intellectual property is a very, very technical piece, and it's something which we, this is the way that us looking at each other now, we are very, very careful with, and it's to make it work is extremely difficult, and I think. From our message we were getting across the last Indaba was, advice. But at the same time, and make it clear, it can be done with the proper advice, and it's not everyone can give this advice. It has to be firms that do it, and we can recommend firms, but we in the Isle of Man we will only do it with advice that that we and you and the potential client is happy with.
So in deciding what the topics is, we don't look at what we can do in the Isle of Man. We look at what the need is in South Africa.
Oh, okay.
How we can help people to understand what they need to do in South Africa. Get them all of little pieces of information.
Yeah.
And then we would leave the Isle of Man in and say, this is how the Isle of Man can help. And I think that for me is important because it comes back to the heart of what the Indaba is. It's about helping South Africans.
Yeah.
And the intellectual property one, it is so difficult getting the right advice. But how does someone that walks in the street know where to get that? And I think what you said is so valuable. We can introduce people to those professionals that can do it.
Fantastic. Rolf, you just spoke about helping South Africans. And Stephen, you mentioned earlier on about a case whereby you were able to raise finance for South African business. Can the three of you just tell us a couple of success stories that you can share to our audience about what you guys have done to help South African businesses progress, either in South Africa or globally?
So a couple of examples. We've worked with a company quite a number of years ago that is in a quite industrial company. They use quite a lot of industrial heavy kind of equipment, etc. Hugely successful in South Africa and what they wanted to do, but they wanted to broaden their scope into Africa. And the question was, how do we achieve that?
Yeah.
So they knew it was possible, they don't know how. And from our side, we actually came and brought the expertise, how to do it, and then facilitate that whole process. I've dealt with companies that wanted to start to trade internationally. How do you do it? How do you put all of these things together? I'm helping a family now, which is a great family, but the business is a third generation South African business.
Wow.
And the senior family member realized if he's really want to provide for his family, it has to go international.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you just change your mindset from thinking only South Africa with exchange control and all of that to suddenly having the world as your oyster? And I think that for me is a very good example of what can be done and how it should. And it's handholding. It's taking them by the hand and have you done this now? Have you done that? Have you spoken to that? But show me the tax advice that you've got. Okay, good. Now here's the next step that we are going.
Yeah.
That's two examples from my side.
For me, it's a little bit harder being in government, but I can go back to the time when I was CEO of a trust company. Yeah. And this was more on the philanthropic angle. This individual was a very successful prospector, and he was looked after by a large international charity when he was very young. And he wanted to pay back to that large international charity. And I know certain aspects of that charity are actually here. Okay. And what we did in the island, we actually formed a structure, we protected it, we made sure that it would stand challenge. And then, unfortunately, the settlor died, so we started to pay down. So then we actually saw that money start getting put to good use. So a slightly different angle from Rolf. But I think it just demonstrates the capability that we do have on the island to try and help people. Yeah. It was quite an elaborate structure, I must admit, but it had to be, and there was a lot of money involved. So it's really important that you get, top drawer advice and make sure that it will stand scrutiny.
I think we'll never claim to know everything, and it's far from it. And we are learning every day from South Africans, and especially. We're not living here. We don't pretend to know everything. I mean, I was born and proudly am South African. I've been living in the Isle of Man for 20 years. But I think what's important, the point is we do so many different things in our world, and we have access to so many different types of advisors and things like that. So we feel we can add, provide the right advisors, the right advice, the right investment manager, the right bankers. That's how we try and do, not in a way that we know we're not, but we try and do that. And I mean, today, example, a gentleman asked me about export, and my eyes lit up because I've been exporting for a very long time. Not me, but we've run a structure for that, and we, export is a good thing for South Africa because it's bringing foreign income in, and what a lovely conversation to have. Now, why do I know how to export? I'm a chartered accountant and living in the Isle of Man. We are exposed to, and we are privileged to be exposed to people, different people. I mean, to the people I've met today. It just makes it all worthwhile.
But sometimes I think, Stephen, it's people think that what we are doing is so elaborate, it's so difficult, and sometimes we just need to ask the right questions for our clients. We've dealt with experience, but sometimes it's just asking the right question that prompts a client to follow a different route or do things differently. It's sometimes not complicated, but it's just asking the right question that I think.
I think there's another angle to this in terms of us being an international finance centre. I've grown up in that sort of environment as a professional person, and those, when you're in offices, this stuff starts to rub off on you. What might seem the art of the impossible becomes the art of the possible. But that's and that's by rubbing shoulders and if you like doing your apprenticeship in your particular area. And we've got over 50 years experience in this in the Isle of Man, and I think we're piggybacking, we're growing as we go along. And there's a lot to be said for the fact that we've got some good history as an international finance centre, and that does get passed down the line. I mean, the clever bit for me is knowing when you need to get advice. We can all sit there and try and advise on something, but I think when you work in an international centre like ours, the first thing you do is you don't know everything. But we probably know somebody who does know something. And the skill in what we do is bringing all that information together into like a memorandum of advice. But you've got to know what you don't know. And I think part of that comes by being in the environment that we're in and having 50 years of experience in that.
I'm going to throw a wheel spanner and take a few steps back. Just for our audience, let's talk Finance Isle of Man, what it does, what's its objectives, and what are you guys trying to achieve. And then after that, Boston Multi-Family Office to do the same. Just to clarify why you guys would be working together with the people that you're working together with, and then Indaba.
Right, shall I go first? Right, in terms of Finance Isle of Man, we're here to try and grow the financial services economy in the island. We don't want to do that at any cost. We want to do it in a symbiotic relationship. You've heard people talk. We want longevity. We want things to happen that, they're not here today, gone tomorrow. We want them to last for 10, 20 years. And then that provides a base then that we can go forward from. So that's one of our objectives, is to try and grow and gain revenue for our economy. The second thing is we're a conduit between government, albeit I am government, and industry. So we'll take soundings from industry on legislation, policies, and things like that. So we want to listen to them because we do have certain things within our powers and within reason we can possibly change it. And that's one of the things that we want to do, because we want to have a healthy relationship, just like we're here now. Talking about things, any things that might frustrate them, we want to hear, because there might be certain things that we can do. So we're sort of these, Rolf and Stephen, brilliant at going out on the front foot and doing what they do. But you still need legislation behind you to reflect and to complement. But don't forget, we're also, a whitelisted territory. We've got people like OECD, which is a large international body policing what we do. So, we want to do things for the better. But, it doesn't mean to say that we're going to, cut corners in what we're saying. We want to maintain our status as top draw territory.
So from a Boston MFO perspective, I think using years of experience of working in different jurisdictions, we felt that with South Africa, it was a natural choice. We can talk about the history of South Africa and Isle of Man. I mean, it's got extremely close ties, starting with the mining in Isle of Man coming to an end, and the mining here. So there's very the Mulray family. It's a well-known name there. That's a Manx surname. You've got the
Call it Drive.
Call it Drive. That's a Manx thing. I think from Boston's perspective, it's a natural thing to come down here. From a culturally, and I think we've got a number of South Africans working there, but it's probably not the reason. It's probably from relationships and it's a natural fit. Isle of Man and South Africa.
I think Boston's whole ethos and the way Boston works sits well with what is happening in South Africa. So Boston was born out of a single family office, and a single family office just basically means it is an office that looks after the financial welfare of one family. And it developed from there to service more than one family, 2, 3. And 20 years later, we sit with Boston where it is currently. And Boston deals with entities that want to trade internationally.
Okay.
I think the one thing that, from my perspective, that we are really, really, really good at is the private wealth part.
Okay.
In other words, helping wealthy individuals have their money overseas, put it in a safe structure, and looking at after that way, with the ultimate purpose of transferring that wealth to future generations. And that is what it's about.
Okay.
So you want to come to that stable jurisdiction that Nick has spoken about, that has this wealth of experience and knowledge, because you'll know your wealth is well protected for future generations.
Great.
And that for me is something that I think Boston is doing magnificently. And then I would say the third part is where we look after these family offices.
Yeah.
Where these families comes to us with very specific needs that you want to look after. And their needs are unique. It's difficult to explain exactly what their needs are because it is so complex. And because every family is different, every office is going to look different. But Boston has that experience, that depth of experience and knowledge to cater everyone that it is unique to that person. And I think that is would you agree, Simon? That's a fair summary.
Very well put. I've been a lot. I'm absolutely. But I think what's important at this point to note, Boston's not the only corporate service provider on this trip in part of the Indaba. We are traveling with Atla Group and ILS and Stonewell have joined us in previous, and they're all very similar reasons for coming up, but we also have slightly different offerings. Our relationship with our competitors, I think everyone looks at us and say, but you've just referred to competitors. We don't only look at the competitors, where's the better fit? I know from the guys from Atla with us at the moment, there's certain things they do slightly differently to us. We're not scared to do that, and I think it's in the interest of all people. And I'm not just. It's proofs in the pudding. It's done. And I think that relationship, I think everyone thinks it's pretty unique, and it is. From a BD perspective, it's crazy, but it's not. It's for the good of not only the island, but actually for the long-term sustainability, because hopefully you get something back one day. So.
But also from the client's perspective, because we are competitors, if that client doesn't fit with what we are doing, then I'm definitely going to refer it to someone else, because they're in a better position to look after it. So if you reason this from a client's point of view, then you sit with these groups of companies that are competitors with each other, but they actually complement each other because it's for the benefit of the individuals and families.
I like how it's put, because even today there was a person sitting next to me and saying, how can all of you be competitors but be presenting together? And that is the one thread that I resonated the most was, yes, we may be competitors, but we complement each other. And our solutions, we may not have absolute solutions in one company, but there may be, complementary solutions in another.
Okay, interesting. I mean, Nick, I'm going to pose this one to you, right? I think we've heard from the gentleman from Boston Family Multi Office what they have to offer. I mean, what else from a governmental perspective does the Isle of Man offer for businesses in South Africa, the Isle of Man in general?
I think one of the main qualities that we have, or one of the main assistances we can provide, if people have a question and might be curious about how might this work, how might it not work, we can really direct them. What you've got to be mindful of here, these people that are sat here are exceptionally skilled, right? And government, we're sort of, I wouldn't say we're a blunt instrument, but we don't have that technical know-how.
Okay.
But we know we've got it within our economy.
Yeah.
We've got 350 financial services companies there. We don't know everyone, but we will know 95% of them. So we can help people come if they say, I've got a bit of a conundrum, Nick, can you help me? What? And I'll say, okay, I've got 3 or 4 names here, make some phone calls, I can introduce you to them and start talking about what you're thinking about, and then we'll come back to the art of the possible again.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how we can help, because we know our territory, and it might be, we're a good starting point.
Yeah.
But trust me, all the clever stuff goes out to industry, because that is what they do.
Yeah.
You know, and then they can open themselves up to, or this particular guy up to their networks as well to come up with that solution. So I think connectivity is one of the key points. I think another area that we can score quite highly on is if people looking to set something up on the Isle of Man, like on the internationalisation front that we've mentioned before. You know, there are certain financial assistances that we can provide there, up to 40% of certain capital items. And when you travel around South Africa, you know, you do have your own unique culture. Yeah. And we also like South African companies to bring that culture with them too. Yeah. So we will also help and assist them to bring those individuals here, be it via immigration, or that we can provide them with some financial incentives up to 20% of their salary. 12 months down the road, because it's important to try and buffer those costs, because if you go to a new territory, it can be exceptionally expensive, you know, to set something up. And in the longer term, you know, they're going to employ people on the Isle of Man. So, you know, as a government, we'll get a tax take from, you know, a tax that we take, albeit a lot lower than most other countries. You know, our tax rate is 22%. So, you know, there are, you know, I think that's what we can help with. You know, some of the financial stuff, some of the connectivity, making sure to speak with the right people. And it's funny, you were talking earlier about personalities, and perhaps one client doesn't like this client. I've had situations where people have rung me and they've been in a state of fallout. That I think it's only happened once, but we can buffer that and make sure that we keep that business in the Isle of Man. Because sometimes personalities, they just clash. And that was a classic example, and we managed to, resolve that.
So I would like to, from industry, respond to that same question that you've asked Nick. There's 2 aspects for me which is I thoroughly enjoy about working with government in the Isle of Man. One, government is accessible. Yes, it's a government representative with us. If I've got a problem, here's a very good example that I want to use. I'm receiving a client in my office, and they tried to set up a subsidiary in a different country, and they moved to that country. And 6 months down the line, they haven't managed to get anything done what they need to do. And I said to the client, well, you're here for 2 days. Why don't I go and just get someone from Nick's department to come and speak with us? Within an hour, that person was in my office. 2 months later, those clients moved to the Isle of Man.
Wow.
And 2 months later, everything that they could not get done in the other jurisdiction was done in the Isle of Man, with the assistance of the government. So the accessibility that we've got on that side for me is really, really good. And the other aspect for me is that our government is entrepreneurial. They understand entrepreneurs. They understand people that want to start new businesses and how to do it. And Nick says they don't have the technical expertise. They may not have the technical expertise, but they can tell you they know what they're doing.
Okay.
Fantastic. They know what they are doing.
Just to come back on to Rolf's point there, I mean, I've been in situations where companies, have been looking at the Isle of Man, but as you find with most things, you need to take this past a board.
Okay.
So we'd help them with that pitch deck for their own board to make sure that we get, we're considered fairly and accurately, because we don't want to mislead anybody. So we've actually helped companies who are looking to set up on the island, provide that pitch deck to their own board of directors so they can say yay or nay to, which is, I think that's another important quality that, we have.
Fantastic. I've got 2 questions. The first one I'd like to pose to Lerato, and the other 2 to yourself, Stephen and Rulo. Lerato, I'm hearing quite a lot about synergies. I think that's what I'm picking up. Synergies between businesses and also government and businesses. I mean, from a person who's on the ground here in South Africa, What's your take on that, if I ask?
Okay, I am on the ground here as a Isle of Man delegate because our FSP is based in the Isle of Man. Our headquarters are in the Isle of Man. We have jurisdiction to distribute and operate from South Africa and also into Greater Africa.
Yeah.
But with the synergies, they're very right about that. Oddly enough, some people owe me for referring business their way. And to me, it makes sense because I will introduce someone gladly to Boston as long as once they're completed with the structures, they ensure that when they're in the investment phase, it comes back to us.
Yeah.
We're working together. We're building a working relationship. We're making sure that the client's needs are taken care of. And we're also getting to the greater good of ensuring that even the island itself, that strong governance is replicated throughout all our businesses and how we operate.
Yeah.
We're not a government, we're not a government that is isolating individuals and saying, no, we can't offer you this and we can't do that. No, what we can't do, we'll find someone else that can do it for you. And I don't do structures. I don't do trusts. But I've got Stephen and I've got Rolf doing it. And I'll gladly introduce you to them.
Yeah.
I'm not even in banking.
No.
But luckily, we have a banking division.
Yeah.
But because that structure and that trust is going to need a bank account and to operate, I'll introduce you to the banking people.
Yeah.
And that is how we've been operating ever since I've been part of the Indaba. And it's been fruitful.
Yeah.
I mean, even a year later, we're still talking to people that we met last year.
Yeah.
And we are still pushing things forward. And the one thing that I do like is that Rolf will always mention the fact that get South African advice. Understand how you operate in South Africa, and when wanting to take it offshore, what the intricacies are going to be, so that you do have, even if it's a South African trust and an offshore trust, because you don't want to be caught in a conundrum where your beneficiaries, when it's time to pay out, you passed away here in South Africa, your beneficiaries are now living offshore and they can't access these assets. I mean, if you had made the right structures and if you're really high net worth or achieving to be, you should have an offshore trust so that they can operate and live off something while everything else is being wound down here. There's always links and synergies, and we're learning a lot from each other because I've learned a lot as well.
Yeah. And I think this brings me to the question I had for Stephen and Rolf. It's, what was your experience and how you find that, I mean, as people who've got South African roots and you've lived in both parts of the world, walking or literally calling a government official such as Nick, and 2 days down the line, whatever you want gets done. You don't have to wait for years, for weeks, for months. The simplicity of getting things done through government and in a legitimate way. What's your take, and how has been the experience, if I'm asking?
I think what we have to be careful that we are a small jurisdiction, which gives us it's a little bit, it's a lot easier to be able to have that service. And I think, you go to, I think think of the most, well, everyone looks at Switzerland being so efficient. Okay, let's say a silly example just comes down. You're not going to get that service because it's a big country. But I think with Isle of Man, it's we needed unique selling points. That's one of the unique selling points. Great point. And but at the same time, it's still the size we are, being a small jurisdiction. I think to still have that it says a lot, because I know there's some smaller think out there, which I will not name, which definitely don't come close to that. In fact, so I think that I think it balanced it a little bit. The Isle of Man, so I don't know if you want to cover off that, Rolf.
I think you're right. I think it's easy. So let's just quickly introduce the Isle of Man government quickly, because I think that is interesting. We don't have any political parties in our parliament. And we vote for individuals to go and represent us in government.
Okay.
And the advantage of that is South Africa is going to go through an election Let's assume another party comes into control of South Africa. They're going to change a lot of things to suit themselves and to make it right for themselves.
Okay.
Whereas because we don't have political parties, that changeover of government is a very smooth one. It's a very democratic process. But the new government will respect what the old government has done and build on what has done. So you're right, Stephen, it is a small jurisdiction and it's easier for government to deal only with 80,000 people than with millions of people.
Yeah.
But I think the building blocks of how that has been put together
Yeah.
is helpful.
Yeah.
Do we have red tape? Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But we've got individuals in government that is very helpful in navigating that. I remember the first time in the Isle of Man when we had to do our tax. And it's kind of intimidating. You suddenly sit with a new tax form in front of you. You've got no idea how to fill this in. And my wife and I put all our little papers into a little folder with the form, and we went up to the tax office and said, we're new to the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
Because we arrived in December and the tax year ends in April.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me who we need to go to help us with
Yeah.
this? And the lady said, just give it here. And she sat and she filled in our tax form and she explained to us what needs to be done. And she says, just sign there.
Wow.
And that was a government official helping us through a really tricky one.
Yeah.
So yes, we do have red tape,
Yeah.
but we've got individuals that is very helpful in government. And government, in my experience, is always willing to listen.
Yeah.
They may not always respond to our request, but they're always willing to listen.
Yeah.
So that would be my take on that. Do you think that is a fair...
That's fair. That is fair, and I think it's both sides. It's actually be able to. You need to step back and actually see both sides of it at the same time to achieve that.
Yes.
Achieve that service that we got.
It's funny you talk about somebody at government helping you. I remember somebody came to visit to the island, and they had quite a novel business. It was basically reprogramming CPUs in cars, to make them sort of go faster.
Yeah.
And this guy was writing all the code, and he could take it out and rewrite it and put it back within about 15 seconds. Now, normally what happens, it's almost like days to reprogram. So you imagine if you were a garage, you can put it on the ramp, you can do your little tweaks, you connect it to your computer, and it all happens in 15 seconds. Whereas before, you'd have to take it and park it somewhere, a lot messy. So it made him far more efficient. But he had one problem. He had an international client base. So when you're charging fees for this, you got VAT and all this. And he said, Nick, I said, I'll be honest. He said, I'm in the UK at the moment with this business. I'm really struggling with it. I said, come on, we'll go. I made a call, got to the VAT office. And he says, what? I said, we're going to the VAT office. And he could see the colour drain out of him. I said, no, they'll help us. They will really help us. And I'm not joking. We were in there for about 45 minutes. And he walked out, he looked at me and he says, that's the best advice I've ever been given. And he said, I can't understand why I couldn't get that in another territory.
Yeah.
But that's the point. We do have red tape. We're a government, but I think it's a relative thing. I think we are probably a lot more nimble than most governments for many reasons that's been mentioned here. Fantastic. But we are trying to be helpful where we can.
Great stuff. We always hear about, I'm sure the Isle of Man has a massive reputation in terms of how well regulated the financial services industry is. If I may ask, apart from the financial services industry, what else is there? Although I'd like us to probably stick to, or maybe hear your thoughts on who are the participants. When we talk of the financial services industry, what exactly is it? Who's there? What are the companies? What do they do? And how are they different? Especially from your experience.
Yeah, I think statistically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rolf, which you normally like to do.
It's not really that bad, is it?
Yeah.
No. No, we're about, financial services about 46% of our GDP.
Okay.
And then you've got sort of gaming, e-gaming's quite big.
Yeah.
I think that's around about 16 to 18%.
Wow.
And then you've got usual agricultural engineering. I mean, engineering's a really interesting one.
Okay.
I mean, you would not believe some of the things that are manufactured and the global reach that they have.
Wow.
There's a company called Strix.
Uh-huh.
And it's quite funny because whenever I go on holiday, the first thing I do is look at the kettle pick the kettle up, because there's a bit in there that
Wow.
over about 60 to 65% is something in a kettle that's been made from the Isle of Man. Anything that boils water.
Yeah.
And there was one statistic I saw, and their product gets used something like 3 billion times a day.
Wow.
But people don't know about this. You know, they're headquartered in the Isle of Man, the piece was generated in the Isle of Man, the IP's in the Isle of Man. There's so many good things that we just don't realise. Mars rover, there's bits on the Mars rover when it was, you know, the lenses, they were made in the Isle of Man. And there's all these little bits and pieces.
Ejector seats from military aircraft.
For a long time, industrial diamonds.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
On the Isle of Man.
Mm-hmm. And there is an engineering piece, but it's quite niche. You know, some landing gear, for instance, on the A380 is made on the Isle of Man. So we are, you know, we're not just a one-trick pony. We've got we've got other things in our locker, and we're really interested in trying to increase that. You know, I'm sat here saying financial services, but we really want to have, you know, a well-diversified economy. Yeah. And, you know, some of the plans that we've got as government, you know, it is to do that, increasing the working, increasing the working population. We probably want to do it in other sectors too. Yeah. You know, so it gives us a bit more stability.
Sorry, Lerato. One of the big industries which you should never forget in the Isle of Man is the TT races.
Okay.
Which is a huge part of what we do. And I love it because it's part of tourism. Yeah. But wow, seeing those bikes race.
Yeah. And it's good you mentioned tourism, because there's in government there's this thought that it's you know, it's probably like less than 5% of our GDP. But it's really important part of A, of our heritage, and B, when people come and visit financial services people, they need places to stay that are reasonable. So, you know, it's not just that they just do tourism. You know, they support us as well on that journey of being an international finance centre.
So we know predominantly we would be looking at Guernsey, Jersey, and Isle of Man. Let's talk about the strong governance of Isle of Man, the 1,000-year-old parliament, and a strong jurisdiction. Because the one question that does come up is always, why Isle of Man?
Yep.
And obviously, I know my bread is buttered, but at the same time, let's just spotlight that, because it is something that we're always talking about, that it's a 1,000-year-old government. It doesn't just willy-nilly change their laws, that whole process, and it's a strong jurisdiction. Double A3 with Moody's. Spent enough time with you guys to tell your island.
You've been listening.
So let's talk strong jurisdiction.
I think, and then the difference between, and you've named two other jurisdictions there. Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man are the three jurisdictions actually work very closely together on many things. From a difference perspective. And it's probably the most common question you get from when you're speaking to certain wealth managers or clients, like, why you? And you know, and I think, and I'm not going to say it's not the case with Jersey and Guernsey, but what we try and do as in Boston and is on relationships. I mean, I was told, you know, from today I heard it's a warm. The Isle of Man's always, the people are so warm. They want to help. We do things slightly differently to try and make the journey easier. We want to attract they're not only their business, but to attract them to understand. You know, so we want to know about their world. We want to get about their life. We're not just we want to give back. Now, again, I'm not saying Jersey and Guernsey is not the case. I've worked, and I still do work very closely with both jurisdictions. But at the same time, I'm not saying they don't do that, but I think that is what I try and achieve to show that difference. There are trust legal slight nuances in the trust and company legislation, which I certainly will not go into because but I don't believe that will be a reason to. You know, we do have VAT, which can add for certain structuring is needed or can be very useful.
I think you today in the Indaba, you laid quite a strong emphasis on stability. And Martin picked up on that, on the stability. And I think that for me is something which is unique in the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
And most probably the biggest motivator why people should take it. So if you again put yourself in that framework of having a trust that has been created not only for the wealth creators, but their children and their children, then we look at a 60-year time frame of looking into the future. So the stability aspect for me is quite important, and that depends on the political stability and the economic stability. And it's interesting when you read the Moody's report, then it is very clear that they see the Isle of Man being a stable jurisdiction with a very positive growth forecast for the future, despite the size that it is. So it's punching a punch quite about that. And the other part is our legal system, which I think is very well regarded internationally, especially if you look at the Privy Council and how the Privy Council deals with that. And it doesn't mean to say that the other countries has inferior legal systems. I think ours has just stood the test of time.
Great. I think with the conversations that we have had so far, I think a couple of things have really resonated within me, and it's the educational piece. For me, I'd like to hear your thoughts, and has there been any active engagement within South Africa to actually take the learning curves that you guys bring down during the Indabas to say, okay, fine, this is what we're doing in the Isle of Man. Can this work in South Africa? From a governmental perspective, from a ease of doing business perspective, and to where we're heading to, not to sound political, but to where the country is heading to now. What's your thoughts on that? Has there been any active engagement within South Africa to actually embrace and support what you guys are doing here?
You've planted an idea in my head here, Tandeka.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a natural growth place where we should grow in.
Yeah.
And you were right, the educational part is there, but I think we can do more in that regard. I must say, the professional people that I'm dealing with in South Africa are extremely well educated.
Yeah.
They know their stuff. And that is part of what is nice about dealing with South Africa, is that if I speak to those lawyers, as you've mentioned, which is the right lawyer for the right circumstance, they know their stuff. I don't need to educate or do anything in that regard. They know their stuff. I know trustees, independent trustees in the Isle of Man, who I would look at and thinking, you know what, I can't educate you, but can I learn from you?
Yeah.
So it's almost a dichotomy of very well educated individuals. But if you're talking about educating grassroots and upwards, I think there is something that the Isle of Man can think of doing in that regard. Because we haven't done so in the past, except for the Indabas.
Yeah.
But I think there's something that we can do taking that forward. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that'd be a really, really good positive things to do. You know, start, a bit grassrooty. Because I like you say, Rolf, you go meet some of these sort of high net worth individuals. They have a great level of financial literacy, and it's almost like trying to get to those, like the entrepreneurs who are trying to solve a problem and think a little bit beyond solving the problem, thinking about your 7-year window of when you're going to sell your company, and preserve your wealth and preserve your capital the best that you can. So not that you can take it out of South Africa, so you can start another business, and you're not having to go to a bank and say, "Oh, please, can you, lend me some money?" or go to a VC that wants to take 50% of your company. And if we can help people in that direction, I think it'd be really, really positive.
Interesting, Lerato. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I think we actually said we did sit next to each other in the office, and we had some very mind-blowing conversations in terms of just everything in general and what's going on. We actually call her our CNN within the office, because anything that comes out within the news, she's the first one to share.
Oh, I could never have imagined that.
I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. What would you like the Isle of Man Indaba to bring to South Africa in general?
That's a hard spot.
Yeah.
Especially from my side, because I'm trying to sell for people to go offshore. But no, it resonates in the longevity of, yes, we are trying to create a relationship of working together.
Yeah.
So within creating the relationship of working together, yes, we're trying to ensure that people have offshore structures, offshore trusts, and offshore relationships, and ways of moving or expanding offshore. But how do we encourage them to do that? Therefore, it goes back to maybe going back to the grassroots level and saying, this is where you need to start internally, and this is how you start internally. Educate them to start, as Rolf always says, start in South Africa first, and then look at the bigger picture. Because the only way that they would expand or go offshore is by initially starting here anyway. And we just need to find a synergy of that education, not just being at a expert, I hate that word expert, but at an expert level, but at a ground level where even the layman can understand.
I think grassroots, you've got a very good point there. I sometimes get frustrated with South African individuals because I think, and this is, forgive me for a very blunt, generalized statement to make. I look at how family businesses and businesses overseas are run, and I compare it with South Africa. And South Africa have a very generation view of it. I build a business up, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to look after myself for my retirement. That's one thing that I want to educate entrepreneurs with. It's not necessary. You can build that business up, you can build capital in that business, and then transfer that business. Your succession plan is to give it to your children, and instead of your children having to start from zero again, they start from 60. And already they're in a better position because they've got capital, and they've got the infrastructure to actually do something. And if they love you, they look after you. So make sure that is what. And I think that those points is where the education for me becomes important. It's about succession planning. It's about capital preservation.
It's really interesting what you've just said there, because it's almost totally the opposite. Because I have the culture where I've come from, where you get a company, you build it, and you sell it. Whereas it's quite interesting your perception of you build it.
That's interesting.
Don't you see? You know, when I said I was thinking about a 7-year window, and then you cash your chips in and start your next thing.
So the intriguing part is that as Rolf was going on, I saw Stephen and I stare at each other because I think this is the Zambia topic all over again.
It is.
Where in Zambia, my biggest thing, and I think even in industry, my biggest thing is when people ask me what I do, and when you have to explain to the layman what you do, and I say an investment specialist or business development, they go, huh? So I say, I make the rich people get richer. And then they look at me and they're like, oh, then how do I get rich? But my biggest thing is always inheritance issues are always up there. We never talk about money in families. We never talk about how to hand it over. And my biggest conversation and my biggest punt is let's talk succession planning. Let's talk about how your lineage will benefit from it. In Zambia, I even made a practical example of my own situation of where I've ensured that it goes down all the way to from my daughter to my nieces. But I've ensured also for a letter of wishes to ensure that they should carry it on that far. Because we're trying to instill not just financial literacy, but also wealth management, wealth retainment, and growing it and keeping it within the family. My child now, if you ask her and she's 6 years old, what does mommy do? She's going to tell you she works for Capital International. I was like, there we go. Because if she doesn't know what I do, how I do it, then half of the things that you have in the house, you don't know where you're getting them from or how you're getting them. And the one thing that Rolf also mentioned in the last Indaba, in October, was about starting from a young age to talk to your kids about finances and business, and because that is how, treat them like they're your board members. It's things that we need to start instilling to every South African, to every layman. Yes, you are building a family, but at the same time, hand over and instill that structure so that they can carry it on.
Interestingly, I think this conversation helps us to segue into the next topic, which I want to start with Stephen, actually. Rolf, you mentioned about cultural difference in terms of businesses. Let's look at relocating to the Isle of Man. When a South African individual relocates to the Isle of Man, what are the advantages? And Rolf, I want to also come to you and say, what have been the drastic changes you've seen, especially from a personal perspective? You know, a person can move up with family, with kids, schools, social life, etc. What are the changes, or what are the differences, and how can one navigate, between those differences, if I may ask?
I think from the Isle of Man is what it does offer. It offers an outdoor life. I mean, which you get here. But, we can talk about the safety and security. The fact that Rolf was talking about this morning, that he went on holiday but didn't lock his house and was away for 2 weeks. I don't think I've ever locked my car, which I literally... you can talk about that thing. Living there is it's an outdoor life. It's a free. My 9-year-old and 11-year-old walk home on their own. Don't bat an eyelid. The kids get a lot of freedom that I think I had it growing up in South Africa to a degree. But I think it's also opportunities. Within the Isle of Man that you're from and getting to Europe, getting to the UK. But I'm saying this, but I don't want to say, because South Africa is my first love. And I'm struggling to say this. So excuse if I've been a little bit rested. I don't really want to answer that question. But there are reasons people want to live there. There are people. For me, my place of work will always be in the Isle of Man, because that's what I've specialized in. That's always be. So for that reason, someone asked me this morning, well, what's your plan? And I said, well, if you want, my grand plan is to retire at a normal age and try and return to South Africa. Now, that's a wild dream. It's a long way off, but that it is. It
is,
I've not answered your question one little bit, but I think what I've done is giving you probably how a lot of people feel. The Isle of Man is the most welcoming, amazing. The people are just incredible. But at the same time, you never lose that love for this country, and we are your ambassadors. I mean, I'll defend South Africa to the hilt. The problems which are there are there, but actually, I mean, where else in the world the beauty of I'm Cape Town, Cape Townian, of Table Mountains. So, but
I think you made my job much easier, because I don't want to compare living in the Isle of Man with living in South Africa. And I'm with Stephen. I'm passionate about South Africa. Don't tell South Africa off. This is an amazing country. The reason why we've left is because we had a business and we had to follow the business. And so everyone, Nick, yourself, will have a specific reason why they've gone to South Africa. Our reason wasn't because we were dissatisfied with South Africa. We had a purpose to go there. And I think that for me is very important. I've spoken, and it's interesting that you've asked the differences in culture, and I think any person that leaves South Africa to go and live internationally and think, oh, we're going to change our roots, we're going to change our culture, we're going to change the way we do things in the house, and we're going to change our traditions, and that, I'm thinking of that and thinking, you're setting yourself up for failure. Why would you like to change your traditions, your family traditions? Why do you want to change your family culture? I've made a decision when my children were young to speak only Afrikaans at home. And I've done so for nearly 19 years. And my wife, who's English-speaking South African, I love her to bits, and she's a great wife and a great lady. And she only spoke English because we wanted to give our children that idea of, you've got South African roots, but it's Afrikaans and it's English. But you are South African. And we preserve that quite a lot. So ask my children today, they'll tell you we are South Africans living in the Isle of Man. They did not really live in South Africa, but
Yeah.
They are South Africans. So I think that for me is the first thing. Don't try and be someone else there than what you have been here.
Yeah.
The differences in life, the biggest adjustment is very close to what Stephen has said. You know what? We go out and we enjoy life. Whether there's a windstorm, whether it's snowing, whether it's raining, whether it's -3 degrees, people are out there walking their dogs, going to the beach. I've said to my children they're not allowed to swim until it's 10 degrees because I personally can't deal with it if they want to swim when it's less than 10 degrees. So, you know, it's an interesting lifestyle, and I think that for me is a huge difference. Safety is a difference to get used to, and I think a lot of South Africans suffer from post-traumatic stress because suddenly your 17-year-old daughter can go for a walk on the beach at 10 o'clock at night, and you're not worried. You know, the door is open, it's not locked. She can come in and she's finished. That is a shock that your body goes through. And I think it's changes like this, Tandika, that is the difference between living in South Africa and living on that side. It's an adjustment because things work differently. It is an adjustment because certain things works easier, other things are more difficult to organize. And culturally you need to find your way through the Isle of Man culture to understand how that works. And if you ask me for my advice that I would give, it's what Stephen has said. Pull back into the community. The community in the Isle of Man, and I hope it's your experience as well, community in the Isle of Man is amazing. Ask people for help, they'll help you.
Yeah.
But the bottom line, the fundamental thing that I want to say is don't change who you are because you're not living in South Africa anymore.
Yeah.
Preserve those traditions, preserve those grassroots that you've got.
So the funny thing is, Rolf always says he's the black sheep that got sent off. Yes, I still remember. He's the black sheep that got sent off. And that is why he went to the Isle of Man. But when you open up his veins, there's still biltong. Cook sisters all coming from there. Which is, I'm listening to him and he's like, punting, oh, this is the Isle of Man. I'm like, yeah, biltong, man. We eat pap and what did you have last time?
Pap and oxtail.
Yes, pap and oxtail. And he was the only one on the table insisting on pap. And I was like, are you sure about this? He's like, it's all I have when I'm here.
Yes. So I still make pap at home.
Yes.
When I fry, then I make pap.
Yeah.
But pup's expensive, but
It's expensive, so it's a little bit of pap.
there's a business opportunity for someone.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good. Nick, I'd like to hear your thoughts when we, especially from your perspective, doing business in South Africa. Obviously, you interacting with South Africans that want to do business in the Isle of Man. When you trip down here, like how does it feel? I'm sure there's no traffic over there.
You know what?
Here, when you're going to a meeting,
It's I absolutely really enjoy coming down here. Right? It's a different culture to what I'm used to.
Yeah.
But I accept, you know, it's your culture, it's your country.
Yeah.
And I think you've got an awful lot to offer. It's really interesting for me because one of my previous roles was, you know, selling the Isle of Man to other people. And I'm sat down here thinking, this is going to be a tough gig. But there are differences, you know, and I think it depends on your circumstances. You know, like Rolf, he went with the business. There's different circumstances. I think you adapt and you make the best of what you have. But I think safety is a big thing, and the biggest adjustment that the South Africans that I know, and we've got quite a few in our friendship group. Yeah, it's all that sort of checking the doors, making sure everything's locked. It takes them nearly a year, 18 months to get out of that, and they can start to relax a little bit. And that's one of the biggest differences. But you're just a totally different culture. But it's a great one.
So you're telling me that the PTSD of safety is bigger than the shock they'd get of weather adjustments.
Yeah, right. When it comes to weather, we have a saying, right? It's not inappropriate weather, it's inappropriate clothing.
Okay.
Yeah, wrap up warm and
But saying when it gets to 10 degrees, shorts and t-shirt come out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is Celsius. We're not talking American.
10 degrees Celsius.
You shorts and t-shirt, and it's
But you talk about not losing your culture, Rolf, when you go, when you're in the island. I have a friend who braais his Christmas dinner in his garage, because that's his culture. And it's a turkey that's like, that big, smoked, all that.
I get that.
Yeah.
I did my lamb on the braai this year.
Lamb on the spit.
And that was in March.
Yeah.
That was only a few weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I did.
So I once had a braai and on New Year's Day, and the children had to bring out umbrellas just so that I can turn the meat in the snow. So we were outside and we were braaiing. I mean, there's no way. Why would you miss the opportunity?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to stop the culture of braaiing on New Year's Eve.
Can I just say
just
that
the snow.
there's one thing that I think is really quite similar is the friendship that you get when you come here.
Yeah.
I don't. Everyone will talk to you. I mean, it's probably, I don't want to mention a town in the south of England, but you go down there, nobody talks to you. If you go and work, you're on a tube. There's a clue there. Nobody will speak to you. And I've had no end of situations where something's happened and I've turned to the people. Somebody tried to jump on the tube and he got his head stuck in and his body was out. And so I said to the person, he's not going to do that again, is he? And just don't talk to you.
Yeah.
Whereas you the further north you go in the UK, and particularly the Isle of Man's relatively north, people will talk to you. They'll make friends with you. They'll buy you a beer.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. So there is some similarities, and I think that's why we do get on really well.
Great. And as we conclude, South Africa was the starting point of the Isle of Man Indaba's delegation tripping to Africa. And Lerato, you've mentioned that the Indaba was actually held in Zambia this year. Is it for the first time out of South Africa?
Yes.
Yes, so oddly enough, these great minds in here thought that we need to expand and opportunities. So myself, Nick, and Stephen, and Marion from Boston, and Cecilia went there last week. And the reception and the amount of people that pitched up and the value of attendees. I think it was more about the type of people that attended this time and the questions that they were posing. It would be a death trap if we don't go back. I'm already punting my next trip.
You've got no excuse. You got to get on that plane. Yeah. And I think, we made that decision to go, and I've been traveling there for 20 years, but I go every year, but we've never taken it to the wider, to the Indaba group, and I was nervous as anything, especially when no one, it started and it was no one there, and I said, well, we're supposed to be here at 8 o'clock, and there's no one here.
African time.
And then two people pitch up, and then this one of this lawyer, he said to me, guarantee there will be a. He said, you must stop stressing about time. And I said, okay, I don't believe you. And then people came, and honestly, the quality of people and the warmth. I mean, and it was wonderful. They were happy to stay. People were staying, and they wanted to hear about us. They wanted to hear about what we, and it was. We did a presentation which was very much back to basics, but it was good, and actually during it. They wouldn't stop asking questions. So
Stephen had to rally them and stop the questions.
Well, we had to. Said, can we take that? I mean, and the questions being asked, we realised actually we're pitching to, we've been not disrespectful. They are, and they were informed. And the follow-ups there, I mean, today I've been following up, and Lerato, I know you've been following up, and it makes me, I'm absolutely, can I say it, buzzing from the experience. So I'm sadly not going to stay till the end of the Indaba. I'm leaving after there, but I'm actually kicking myself about. I want to stay on, but I feel we've achieved, and we are looking at other jurisdictions. We don't. South Africa will always be the place where we will. It's always. But we also think there's other places we can go and offer the opportunities.
I think for me, Africa-wise, South Africa is the springboard. You need to start here in order for you to expand. What the Zambia one also triggered for me, I've already got now trips lined up for Kenya. I'm seeing opportunity and I'm itching. And just from one experience of going there, he kept the secret to himself for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I go there once and I'm itching and he's already saying, it would be bad for you if you didn't go there. And I'm already like committing myself, I'll go there at least 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Because the opportunity is there. People are informed. People,
Yeah.
there's actually money.
Yeah.
And we've even learned that in Zambia, their foreign investments don't get taxed when they go in or out because they were already taxed individually at the base. And I was like, okay. So it also gives you that opportunity of go take advantage of what is out there and create value in their lives. It's not about just us just wanting business. It's also about creating value and putting the right structures in their lives.
I think you hit on something there. Someone asked me, was the Indaba a success? And my response was yes, because I think the clients got something out of it.
Yeah.
I think that for us is part of the ethos of the Indaba.
It's exactly it.
It's not a business venture.
Yeah.
It's about helping clients benefit from it. Why would we want to keep it only to the Isle of Man? And going into Zambia for us was easy because we of Stephen and his 20 years of but I certainly suspect that in the near future, specifically Southern Africa, we'll see more of the Indaba as we go. Whether we call it Indaba, we'll have to see. Indaba is quite unique to...
You'd have to keep it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's branding recognition and all of those things, but it's something that we will have, the name we will have to consider. Is it going to follow the same format? I don't know. It might change. We're quite open-minded in that regard and seeing how we can do it.
Nick, I'm also interested to hear from your perspective about the island's interaction with Africa in terms of doing business. Is it just only South Africa or the broader continent?
I do know, because of where my work takes me, that this isn't me travelling, but certainly by going around other people in the corporate service world, we do quite a bit in other parts of Africa. Yeah, and I think everyone finds their little niche, and they build their relationships.
Yeah,
it might be Zambia's, one for you, and you get your little niche of advisors, and it works really well. But what the Indaba does is probably take it that little bit wider, and so you're breaking those niches and you're going more public.
Yeah,
and it'd be quite interesting. Some of the people that I know that go into other parts of Africa, if we go in there, how they might respond. Do they want to join? Do they not want to join? But to answer your question, there is quite a bit going on in Africa. But the Indaba isn't all of it. It's just a good collective that I think we can, leverage, and everyone gets something out of it. And when I say everybody, that's clients and us.
Fantastic. Lerato and I, we've always wanted this platform to share out or be an opportunity for people to speak positive about South Africa, share a message of assurance, of solidarity, of hope. Lerato, you've been part and parcel of the Indaba. Can you wrap things for us in that nature, please?
Oddly enough, and I'm not being paid to say this, the past 8 months of knowing these, I won't say fools, but these experts of mine has been very interesting.
Yeah.
There's also been personal growth for myself. There's things that I've learned and have taken back personally into implementing in my own life. So for me, being part of the Indaba has not just been about the individual companies. It has been about obviously educating the audience. It has been about, yes, us finding business amongst ourselves and creating relationships amongst ourselves, but it is really about the attendees more than anything else. And people will always be like, no, you guys are business, you need to get return on investment. Yes, sure. But in the process of getting return on investment, we are helping someone else and their lives and structuring them in accordance to what they should be heading towards to achieve the goals that they want. So what I could say is, as long as I'm still around, I will be trotting around with them and expanding into the other areas of Africa, because we find that the way we're presenting it, the format may change, but as long as it's always there with a collaborative, then it will work.